Tuesday, February 23rd. Welcome to the regular board meeting of the Fargo Board of Education. Robin Nelson indicated that she would be a little late likely this evening. I haven't heard from Jennifer, but we have other board members. All the other board members are here tonight, so welcome. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda? Jim?
I move adoption of the agenda with the addition of an HR addendum under item 5B that was located at our work location.
Is there a second?
Second. Oh.
I will put the second with Dr. Newman. And we'll move on with our, let's see, sorry, a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We have not had anyone sign up to speak with us this evening, so we'll move on to the fourth item on our agenda, the reports section. The first item, item A, is an information technology report. We have memo 95 to refer to, and welcome Bill Westrick.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide the IT update for the year. I want to take this time to talk about the last year to give you an idea of how we've gotten to the point that we're at now and what we'll be doing moving forward. You've got the copy of the report in front of you. I'm going to try and hit the highlights instead of boring you by reading the whole thing. The first page is our normal EL9 update, items 7, 8, and 9. It says that we protect data. Yes, of course we do. Moving on, I wanted to make sure I listed everybody in the IT department so that you could see who these fine individuals are. Like everybody in the district, they stepped up over the last 12 months time and time again. Everything that we needed, they did. So those are that's their names. Now we're going to kind of do the Cliff's Notes version of the rest. So a year ago, I was on a date with my wife in a movie theater. I checked Facebook. That's how far we have come in the last year. When the governor closed schools, we got a couple of weeks to plan for how to become a remote learning district. IT, we had what we thought was the easiest thing. We had a certain number of devices. We had to make them work because we weren't going to be able to get more devices in that short a period of time. And everybody else in the country was also going to be looking for resources. So the teachers had the hard work of putting together resources and getting them ready. What we found was we didn't have enough devices. In grades 6 through 12, we've been one-to-one for years. They're fine. If students were free and reduced and they asked for internet, we got them internet. They're good. In the elementary, we have small group devices back in March, 5 to 6 per classroom. We took all of the devices from all of the schools, brought them back here, cleaned them, because it turns out K2 students tend to be a bit boogery. And what we did then was we figured out how many families are there that live in the same address, and how can we get one family or one device per family. So we worked that out. You'll see in the learning, not a great method. When you've got 3 or 4 kids at home trying to do remote lessons, fighting over one device was not optimal, but it's what we had at the time. The bigger issue that we had in March was we didn't know how we were going to supply internet to families that didn't have it. We never supplied internet for elementary kids because we didn't have one-to-one. We couldn't get anything from AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon because they sold out already from schools that went out of in-person instruction before us. I'd like to take lots of credit because I was on the phone with Midco a lot, but I have a feeling that the governor talking to Midco was probably the deciding factor, and they offered free internet for everyone. Basically, no questions asked. No questions asked to the point that if you were to ask me at the end of this how many families took them up on their offer, I can't tell you. They just went and installed internet everywhere that they were asked to do so. They really, really stepped up. So that made it possible for us to have the remote learning for these elementary kids, but we knew that some families, no matter what we do, wouldn't contact anyone about internet. So we made sure that these devices were loaded with all of the content. And I have to give Ryan Meyer from Apple a lot of credit. It turns out loading hundreds of iPads with all of the information in the device so that you can click links and have videos open is really hard. And Ryan camped out here for a week and helped us load devices 10 at a time, because that's what it took to get it done. And the Department of Instructional Resources from Fargo Schools stepped up, gave us people to help coordinate all of the devices so we could get that done. If you remember what it was like in March and early April when people were talking about how long the virus might live on a surface, we took that really seriously back then. We split our IT department up so that we never had more than half around at the same time. It made it harder for us to get device stuff done, but it ensured that one person getting COVID wouldn't take out our entire department. We also created a student helpline that was the request of the principals and teachers, I believe, and it was part of our learning plan. So we created a helpline that parents and students could call, and we made sure that it was manned until 6 o'clock, Monday through Thursday, 4:15 on Fridays. Moving on to summer, we had to stick with remote learning, which meant we had to make sure that the kids didn't turn in their devices at the end of school and kept them over the summer. And then we talked to Midco because they were going to end the program for free internet in June. They extended it to July. While we were working through summer school, I worked with Midco, and they agreed to create a whole new pricing tier for families. $14.95 per month for internet, no extra paperwork, an affordable option. But as we talked with our principals and counselors, what we found was they were very concerned that there were going to be families, especially under COVID times, that couldn't afford $14.95. Businesses don't like direct, cable companies especially don't like direct billing another address, but they agreed we could install internet at home through them and they would bill us directly. So what we created was a form that any principal or counselor could fill out, and all we need to know is you, principal or counselor, say that this address needs internet. Between Midco, Sparklight, who stepped up with the same pricing tier, and 702 Communications, will get them internet. The last things that we decided in the summer, we ordered Chromebooks and iPads in June. We got the iPads, we didn't get the Chromebooks. We licensed Zoom for our teachers. We used the free accounts in the spring. There was some consternation about that at the time because there were news reports about it being unsecure. They fixed that very quickly, which made it possible for us to use them, and they were free and it worked. But we did buy licenses for everybody for this year. It gave us the side benefit of allowing teachers to say, I want kids to log in using their Google account, which eliminated the Zoom bombing problems that we had a little bit of in the spring. We added Seesaw for the elementaries. That was our engagement program of choice. So teachers could post lessons and materials, and parents and students could respond. We've got some stats on that at the end. And we added Dreambox for math for remote students. When the school year was about to start, we knew we weren't going to get those Chromebooks. Thankfully, we were smart enough not to do our normal trade-in and recycling, so we were short about 100. Cheryl Jansen, the principal at McKinley, offered to let us put Windows devices in for 4th and 5th grade. We did our best to make them look and act like a Chromebook, but they're a Windows device, so that was a big deal, and that was really nice of her to offer because it allowed every other school to just go on with their plan, and they were the only ones that were waiting for Chromebooks. And then we eventually found, by bothering vendors all the time, somebody who did not pick up their Chromebook order, and we bought it from underneath them. We don't know who it was, but we got our Chromebooks. The Chromebooks we ordered in June, by the way, they arrived 3 weeks ago. So that's how far backed up everybody was on Chromebooks. We added a lot of Edmentum resources for our remote learning students. I want to give a lot of credit to the library media specialists, the tech coaches, and the facilitators who did a tremendous job of getting all of the PD resources ready before school started. The teachers know how to teach. They know their curriculum. They needed to know how to feel comfortable with the tools. that's what these people stepped up and did. And I think it worked out really, really well. Okay, and then with the CARES funds that eventually came out, we purchased some things that we thought would be useful for teachers both in COVID times and hopefully would continue to be useful for them after. So that includes the Zoom subscriptions. We offered for any teacher to get an iPad. Would have been super helpful if it didn't take 8 weeks for them to arrive, but we did get them. An additional monitor for when you're in hybrid or remote learning, because then you can have your lessons and you can have your kids up at the same time. And just a simple thing, giving them an external mic and speaker so that when they're on Zoom calls, people can hear them and they can hear their kids. So what are the lessons that we learned? We added 0.5 extra IT support, and we did that because we had a retirement in the district of a library assistant who knew our iPads and our elementary technology very well, and she was willing to come back at a 0.49. So we hired her, used CARES funds. She's a temporary employee. At the end of June, she's done. So we are probably going to be requesting at least the opportunity to work with Missy and the rest of cabinet to talk about how can we better support our elementaries now that we're one-to-one, because that was a big change for us. We had an idea that we were going to get there. It wasn't going to be this year. So that's something that you can keep an eye on, because we'll probably be requesting that. Free and reduced lunch is probably not a good enough indicator for who needs internet. We budget about $30,000 a year to supply internet to families that need it. We've never actually used all of that money. So we're going to keep this plan in place where counselors and principals can say, I know they're not free and reduced, but they still qualify in my eyes, and we'll keep supplying that option for them. Looking back, if we had a single learning management system in the district, I think we would have been in a much better place to consider remote learning. Nobody expected what happened to happen, but if we would have had a Canvas, a Schoology, one place for everybody to go with content already in there, that would have been really helpful. So that is something that we are moving ahead with now. We're going to tie it to the evidence-based reporting that we're doing with the gradebook. And we're going to have an enhanced gradebook and a learning management system, and we'll be starting in the secondaries this upcoming year. And then finally, now that we are one-to-one, and we're one-to-one pre-K through 12, our tech budget request is going to be higher every year, because we are going to have to maintain and eventually replace these devices on a schedule like we do everything else. And we won't be able to do that in the existing budget. So we'll have to work that out with everybody as well. If we want to look at the numbers at the end real quick, just to give you some stats. If you look at the number of devices, 2,600 new student devices. If you add up all of those individual items, it's around 5,000. But we increased by a quarter our student devices. If you look at our support tickets, we doubled that. Hands down, doubled it right off the bat. We're getting very efficient at handling problems right now, and we're around 120 open tickets a day. But feedback from the elementaries is they need more of our time, and they need to know when we're going to be there on a schedule. And that's where what I want to do is I want to work with Missy on that, because it's not necessarily that we need a tech. What we need is a plan to make sure everybody is as comfortable with technology as they possibly can be. And at the start of the remote learning, it was kind of a hands-off handoff in March. At the start of the school year, it was a very rapid, we need to get these kids their devices and get them to their homes as fast as we can. This upcoming year, we're going to build with instructional resources and with the principals a distribution plan for those one-to-ones so they don't go home the first day. There's more education for parents, there's more education for the kids. We could even have them bring home cardboard versions of the devices and bring them back until they show that they can do that. But we need to do something because we need to have the elementary distribution and maintenance of the devices work better, and we need to have less damage, honestly. When you look at the damages, we're double. I talked with Karen Moore about what she's looking at for what we expect to write off, and we're 50 to 60 devices higher than we would have been a year ago. So we're losing more devices as well. If you look at Seesaw, we've never had a licensed version of Seesaw. We have over 500,000 posts, 392,173 visits by family members, which is outstanding because some of those parents just watch what the kid's doing from the kids' login, so that number is actually higher. And then we've got over 100,000 comments on student work. So teachers are using Seesaw very effectively. One thing that I forgot to add was Zoom. Since the school year started, we have had 76,826 meetings. We have had 36,486,530 minutes of people in Zoom meetings. And we have some virtual academy teachers that Zoom stats say have over 450,000 minutes under their belt. If you do the math, that would be 319 days. So I have a feeling it's them and all of their kids added together. But those virtual academy teachers, I cannot give them enough credit. They are on Zoom morning, noon, and night helping those kids. I guess in summary, I think I'm going to get dangly earrings when this is all over because I can't imagine not having this. If you've got any questions for me, I'd be happy to take them.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much to you and your entire team. You guys all really rock, that's for sure, and there is absolutely no way we would be able to be functioning without the amazing work that you do. It seems magical as you talk about it, but I know it's not magic, so lots of
just
money,
our
lots of resource,
version.
lots of talent.
Yeah, everybody had their version of this same thing from every department as well.
And who has questions or comments? Tracy?
Comment. You didn't even mention that the school board members got brand new devices, so thank you for that. My children call this mom's PLD.
Nice.
So it's very nice. We appreciate that.
Well, I'm surprised nobody has noticed. We 3D printed these little add-ons to your microphone so you can tell when the light is on. I thought that would be the big highlight of this presentation. Don't touch them because they'll fall off. They're really fragile, but they were 3D printed just for you guys.
I noticed that something was there, but I didn't really know what it was, so thank you for explaining that to us. Anyone else? Thank you so much
Thank you.
again. All right, the next item is the COVID-19 instructional plan update. Dr. Gandhi and Dr. Newman. Whoever would like to start.
I actually don't have much to report. We meet again on March 8th. I think I gave the report from our most recent meeting. I'll just say that I continue to follow all the new school reopening guidance and expert recommendations. I recently spent a lot of time trying to analyze and understand the new national CDC guidelines, which I've shared with most of you. So I really don't have an official report.
Tracy, thank you. Dr. Gandhi, anything?
Nope, that's it. We don't have any more updates.
Jennifer?
I have a question for you, Tracy. So regarding data and specifically this morning, it came up on the call too about masks in school and will we get to a point or what does that look like in the future? When can we expect kiddos to not have to wear them every day? And it had me thinking about something you had mentioned during the beginning of the pandemic as the studies began to roll out in terms of the likelihood of smaller children versus adolescents and older children. And so I wondered, in some of our plans, we had different sort of protocols in different age groups, right? Would the same, do you think, be true with masks? Could we, in other words, look forward to maybe the littles having to not wear them sooner rather than later?
Well, that's very optimistic thinking, I think. I'm unaware that there's any data or any like thinking along those lines, but it intuitively would make sense, but I guess I just can't give a definite answer on that. I have been following a lot the upcoming information about children being vaccinated and how that is going to play into all of this. But ultimately, we need children fully vaccinated to reach herd immunity, which will be the key factor for masks fully going away, I believe, in schools, if that makes sense.
Thanks for the question, Jennifer, and Tracy for the follow-up. On to item C, it's the legislative update. Robin may be coming in here as we finish this up, but Dr. Gandhi, would you like to start?
Sure, I will, I won't touch on this too much just because I think Robin will probably touch on it at her report if she's here by the end of the meeting. But obviously we are approaching crossover. There's a little bit of work to be done yet. So we kind of now have an idea of which bills did get a due pass recommendation. So Robin can give a run through when she provides her report, but just do want to say thank you to Robin and everyone else that participated in our crossover breakfast this morning. I thought it was very well done and really organized and a meaningful experience with the legislators. So.
Yes, and thanks to those of you on the board who were able to join in. Very well organized in a tight period of time, and some good questions and dialogue following the presentation. So I appreciate it, and so happy that we were able to hold that in a virtual format. The Fea report is next. Jennifer Mastrud, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to be passing the microphone off to Mr. Grant Kraft. He is a product of the Fargo Public Schools and also a fairly new educator in our district. So he's going to just share a little thoughts with you.
I serve as the chair of Fargo Education Association Negotiations Committee, and I wanted to sort of give a report on Fargo Education Association negotiations. I have previously shared with the board negotiators our intent, FEA's intent, to petition in early April to formally begin teacher contract negotiations. With that date a little more than a month away, we will soon find ourselves engaging in detailed conversations about the conditions facing the teachers and the students of this district. Most of us have danced this dance before, and I think from our experience, we can probably agree that in North Dakota, the negotiations process gives school boards a much, much more powerful position than the representative body. For example, if negotiations break down, an impasse can be called, but the board has the power to accept or reject mediation recommendations, sending the process to fact-finding. Our board has chosen to do this in the past. Additional examples of this unequal power include how historically state fact-finders tend to side with school boards. This has been the case in our district in the past. A school board can accept or reject fact-finding recommendations and impose a teaching contract. Our board has chosen to do this in the past. As a right-to-work state, teachers can take no organized action, such as a strike, to sway a board's decision. In fact, Fargo Public Schools Administrative Policy 5116 states that speech that causes or leads to a disruption of work or interferes in the school district's interests may subject the speaker to job termination and dismissal, thus dissuading teachers from even voicing opinions about board actions. And now, the state legislature is poised to impose a time limit to the negotiations process for future cycles. Members of this board chose to play a part in putting forth that bill and in speaking in its favor. Our school board, through the years, has repeatedly chosen to wield its power to bring about negative actions that impact the teacher's contract, their workplaces, and their families. Some school board members lament these practices after the fact. Others seem to wear them as some strange medal of valor. Some of you may be just now stepping onto this dance floor and are perhaps hearing this perspective for the very first time. Monopolizing on an imbalanced power is wrong. This school board certainly has the right, under North Dakota Century Code, to wield a lot of power over its employees. However, at this very juncture, we ask you to turn a corner, to dance to a different tune. We ask you to not just exercise the power of your rights, but rather to use it to do what is right for the teachers and consequently the students in your care. Will you use that power, those rights granted to you by your position, to continue the cycle that our community has witnessed for far too long? Will you continue on, like others who have come before you, as bystanders, allowing your colleagues to maintain the status quo of division, disrespect, or unwillingness to work together? I believe we can and must do better. Communication and collaboration are integral, and any attempt to minimize or eliminate the voice of FEA is counterproductive to the work ahead of us. We therefore call on Superintendent Gandhi to retract and apologize for untrue statements he made regarding FEA at the most recent board meeting. Misinformation, especially when spread publicly by high-ranking school officials, only leads to more mistrust and divisions and does nothing to help build a culture of collaborative problem-solving in our district. We believe it's time to move on from divisive words and actions. We believe it's time to clean things up. It's time to start fresh. It's time to tune out the voices amongst you that sow negativity or divisiveness. It's time to speak up when it's hard to do so. It's time to come to the table with honesty and openness, with equal voice and a genuine desire to work together and address and solve problems. Oh, we have had considerable disagreements over the years, and we must not ignore our differences, but we must recommit to solving those differences through dialogue. Our community, now more than ever, must see its leaders striving for transparent, honest, and open dialogue. The Fargo Education Association is committed to discussing the issues facing our schools and is dedicated to working toward best possible solutions. We are not enemies. We are not opponents. We need you, and you need us. But more importantly, our community needs to see us working together.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Kraft or myself this evening? All right.
Thank you, and I believe Robin is here. Welcome, Robin. Okay, we are going to move on to the last report, and that is the superintendent's report. Dr. Gandhi.
Sure. I'd like to first start off by just kind of capitalizing on the report from the FEA. I did at the last board meeting, I made a comment that the FEA had turned down a bonus that was offered to all staff. That was based on information that was shared with me since that last meeting. It was, I was told that that was a misinformation. I believe that was shared with myself and other board members, and we were under that same impression. So I did reach out to FEA, and I did apologize, and I did tell them that I would apologize for making that misstatement. I understand the magnitude of saying something like that in a public forum as well. I was going off of some of the information that was shared with me. So I do think that Fargo Public Schools has a good relationship with our Fargo Education Association. I know that there's been recent conversations about a change in direction that I've requested in terms of no longer having monthly meetings that were becoming administrative in function, but using other avenues and still wanting to work with FEA. By no means is the intent of that to minimize that relationship or not collaborate. That is not the intent, but at the same point, I made a statement last time when I was when my integrity was questioned and more of a defensive nature. So I do apologize for that. I made that statement based on the information that was shared with me. It was later said that that was not true, so I have no problem apologizing to FEA, and please know that it is never our goal to create more additional divisive rhetoric within our district. I think it's the exact opposite that we want to do. So I do think that we are better and stronger together. So I do want to start by just saying that this morning. Secondly, I think the rest of my update was really going to be more legislative in nature. I was talking through some of the bills, but I think Robin will do that later today. And I did want to just recognize a couple of school leaders that that will be retiring at the end of this year, and I know that you might have seen their names come across the last couple of board meetings, but we do have a principal vacancy at Carl Ben and North High School, and I do want to just recognize both of those principals that have been, both Brad and Andy Dolan, have been with us for a long time and just a tremendous asset to our students, and I wanted to make sure that board members, if you have a chance to just visit with them prior to the end of this year, just know that they are going to leave a very lasting legacy in our school district and for a lot of students and our families. So I hope that you all get a chance to visit with them as well, and just want to publicly acknowledge their work and their leadership in Fargo Public Schools.
Thank you, Dr. Gandhi. Robin, is it okay if your portion of the legislative update gets covered under your GAC? Okay, thank you. On to the consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval? And is there a second? All right, there's a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Motion passes. We do not have any items on our business agenda. Moving on to board reports, committee liaison and correspondence reports. Robin, would you be prepared to start us off?
Sure. Thank you. On my other notes besides the legislative item, meeting is sitting on my desk, so I'll do the best that I can. This morning, we did have our crossover meeting with our legislators. There were 12 legislators that attended and several board members. Thank you for doing that as well. We covered certain pockets of information, the negotiations timeline bill, some funding bills, some voucher bills, and then also innovative education funding as well. It was very good dialogue. I had a lot of nice comments afterwards. This was our first virtual one. Thanks to Jolynn, she's not here, but coordinating that, changing the times. Other than that, I think we'll debrief at our next Governmental Affairs Committee meeting. But thank you for everybody that did attend. And I put Dr. Newman on the spot, so thank you for responding without maybe being as prepared as you had hoped. So, other than that, one of the other visits that I had since our prior to the last meeting, because we didn't do updates, was Davies, and I requested from Mr. Cody that I would be able to tour during lunch, because that seemed to be one of the most uncomfortable times where students might have their masks off, and they're doing a great job. They have the students having lunch in the lunchroom. They have students in H101, that's the meeting room we're usually in, and in the gym, and they have dots everywhere where kids can sit, and the kids were doing great. That was probably one of the things I wanted to highlight. We toured a couple other classrooms, and things, administration's working really hard to keep the students safe, and I didn't see any mask issues when I was there. I had to check in, take my temperature, but Mr. Cody's doing a really nice job at Davies, so I want to acknowledge that as well. And then you're going to have to forgive me for all my other notes because they're sitting on my desk. I left in a hurry to get here.
No problem. Thanks, Robin, for joining us. Jim, and then we'll go to Brian and Nikki.
Planning had a meeting last Friday, and we have another one this Friday for all of you on the planning committee and anybody that has nothing to do at 7:30 in the morning. Our meeting last Friday really focused in on looking at some of the issues in North Fargo if we were to pair McKinley and Madison. which is a topic we've considered over the years with no definitive direction. And quite frankly, I think what planning heard from the administration is we're still not ready to have a definitive decision made on this, mostly because the schools are farther apart than we would like. We all understand the advantages of pairing, getting multiple classes of every grade level, but the distance there is an issue that we're still trying to figure out. How do we navigate that effectively? So more to come on that probably in the future. We also got an update on the Career Workforce Academy. We are being asked as a district to consider entering into an operating agreement, not a capital contribution to the project, but a commitment that once it's built, will help with the operational costs. I believe West Fargo has already done a letter of intent to this effect, and I know RUPAC is working with the Career Academy folks to really map out what that might be, and it'll probably come to the board sometime in the next month or so, I'm going to guess. We looked at our long-range facility plan and financial plan, and those would have probably been on tonight's agenda for, I guess, readoption or changing if the board chose to. But a couple of issues have surfaced that weren't around at the beginning of summer. I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but NDSU is redoing their outdoor track facility pretty much completely. And they have made a determination that going forward, it's only going to be available for NDSU use. And currently, that is the track that North High students use because we don't have a track per se at North. So one of the issues we have to look at is what are we going to do for a track for the North High secondary students? Administration, working with Todd, our activity director, have got a plan in place for right now. But in the long run, it looks like we probably are going to be looking at making an investment for a track facility for North High. So the administration's going to work up some recommendations and numbers around that, and then integrate that as a possible addition into the long-range facility plan, which also then triggers some changes in the long-range financial plan. So I'm guessing probably about a month from now, both of those will come back to planning again, and then ultimately come to the board for renewal, as is typically on an annual basis. And that's pretty much what we covered at planning.
Thank you, Jim. Brian?
I have one thing to say.
Oh, okay.
I need to give a shout out to Robin Nelson. I know all of you are aware of how hectic things are in Bismarck, but I want to tell you this young lady is probably spending, I'm going to guess, 5 hours a day, mostly in the evening, looking at everything that happened in hearings, listening to the testimony, and then providing us with a report. So thank you, thank you, thank you. If I had gold stars to hand out, I'd cover you with them.
Thank you for calling me a young lady. That's the nicest thing anybody said to me lately.
Yes, Jim, I think we would echo your comments. Thanks for sharing that. Brian?
Based on your guidance in the email, I have nothing to report.
Nikki?
Ooh, yeah, that does work well. Okay. The Communications, Engagement, and Advocacy Committee met last Thursday. I'm thrilled to be able to say we created a plan, we worked the plan, we got through the plan, and we're putting some more on the plan. But we did spend a good amount of time talking about the upcoming town halls. It is a wonderful opportunity for our board to be able to partner with our superintendent and cabinet to be able to get in front of our staff and hear what people are having to say. We will have a board member attending each one, starting with Rebecca, and I think that's appropriate. I do want to talk about, there was one concern that got brought forth, and we spent a fair amount of time on it, and I want to share it because I don't want it to be a concern, and if this can help, I want to get it out there. But it was mentioned to me that employee speech policy, the 5116, which was referred to earlier, would be a concern because people wouldn't come and people wouldn't talk because of fear of retaliation. I don't believe there's anybody on the committee, and correct me if I'm wrong, that feels that that is going to be a concern. These town halls were created and designed with the idea of respectful, thoughtful communication in mind. And that would not be held against anybody. And we want to hear what people have to say. If something isn't working, if somebody's unhappy, if somebody has a great idea, we want to hear it. We don't want to shut that down. And it's not designed to be an opportunity to attack anybody. It's not to put anybody on the spot. It's to be able to convey information and to be able to answer questions around that information. So with that, I know that there's been concern. However, thinking of different things that have happened to us over the last year with COVID, with masking, with virtual learning, with all the various things, I don't believe, I am not aware of any opportunity that anybody has been, that anything has happened. There hasn't been repercussions like, oh, you can't say that kind of thing. If I'm wrong, somebody let me know. What we want to encourage is thoughtful, respectful communication. We want to work together. And the board is thrilled to have a part in that, along with Dr. Gandhi and whomever else happens to be present. It's really designed to be a communication vehicle, not an air your grievances. It's more information behind the decisions, so more people can gather that knowledge. Okay, I just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah, I guess that's about it. We're getting geared up to finish out our year. We continue to write board columns. We want to improve that opportunity for communication. Everybody has done a fantastic job of stepping up to get those things done. One of our big goals was to open up that communication path, and I think we're well on our way. If people have ideas, we'd love to hear it, but it was a good meeting. It was a good conversation, so thank you to all that were there.
Thank you, Nikki. Dr. Newman, and moving through then to David.
Thank you. I was at that meeting and I agree, and I just appreciate your report, Nikki. Let's see, I had my first North Dakota Department of Health BU advisory board meeting, and I'm just super excited about what this group is going to do in our state. I was excited to see there was 2 other Fargo Public Schools employees on the board, Dr. Justin Lean, the new principal at Explorer Academy, and Josh Andrews, the counselor at Davies. There was also a Grand Forks School Board member on the committee. So I was just excited, a lot of collaboration, and I'll report to you guys anything cool that's happening there. I attended the NDSBA negotiations seminar. Thanks to Jim for his expertise on that and for representing Fargo Public Schools. I feel like I learned a lot. I attended the Family Educator Enhancement Team, or the IDEA meeting, through Fargo Public Schools. It was sort of the special education department, and learned a lot. They were recently the recipient of a DPI discretionary grant for students with emotional and social issues, and they're looking to how to use that to increase graduation rates for those kids. They're going to use this grant to provide monthly training for teachers involving functional behavior assessment and creating behavioral intervention plans. And they're currently in the process of applying for multiple other mental health grants, which was very exciting. And then at the end of that meeting, there was a time for parents of children with special education needs to give feedback to how they feel things are going in our district, returning to in-person instruction. And it was truly moving and really inspirational to hear some of these personal stories. I think it's safe to say that virtual education did not serve this population very well, unfortunately. And these families were just so grateful that we are back. There's a lot of talk of room to grow for the virtual academy, especially for children on IEPs. So if this virtual education were to continue into next school year, really looking for ways to improve that, especially for this population. And then February 12th, I had the Fargo Cass Public Health Board meeting, and it was a lot to talk about there, but let's see. Alarming rates of drug-related deaths in Cass County. which I found surprising. There's specifically an increase in meth-related deaths, so there was a lot of talk about our public health service and how we can do education for the community. A big chunk of that meeting was about the COVID-19 vaccines. They, as you guys probably still know, they're working their way through the first 2 tiers of Category 1B, which is 75 and older, and then 65 and older with 2 medical conditions. The next tier is congregate living facilities. Teachers are the last tier in that priority group. I think childcare providers are right before them. So slowly but surely, we're getting there. They were unsure of the exact timeline for teachers. And then we spent the rest of it talking about the mask mandate, which was to expire on the 18th. And we wrote a letter from our board to the mayor and the city commission requesting that the Fargo mask mandate be extended, and that was passed. So it was very exciting. And then they talked about their legislative priorities, which there's quite a few crossovers. Let's see, I did a North Dakota School Board Association Lunch and Learn for superintendent evaluations, and then the breakfast this morning, which was great for governmental affairs, and just in general, I'm doing my best to follow both education and health bills during this legislative session. I feel like it's more than normal, but Robin assures me it's a little less. But since our last meeting, I've sent multiple written correspondence to representatives, both for health and education bills. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Seth?
As like Brian, per leadership, I have nothing to report tonight.
I know you'll have something next time. Yeah, same with you, Brian. Jennifer?
I attended the NDSBA virtual Lunch and Learn seminar on February 17th, and they're offered monthly, so I just wanted to add that not only was there some good information in there that I hope that we consider and discuss as a board in the future, but that they are recorded and available online. So if you're interested in going back and watching or listening to any of the topics, they are there.
David?
We haven't reported out this month, so my visit to North High goes way back to the first part of February. In fact, it was the day that Andy had informed the school or the administration that he was resigning, and he shared that with me. And like Dr. Gandhi said, he's been a big part of our school system, and he's a very, very admired person. It's going to be a hard place to fill. I too, like Robin, went up during lunch because I'd heard that it was a problem. You teachers and administrators have stepped up and are doing such an incredible job. I couldn't be prouder of all of you. They have taken the lunchroom and they've separated it so that the kids are spaced out as much as possible, which left them with a whole bunch of kids that had no place to eat. So staff has provided supervision, and they have spread out through the library, and the library is like eating in a high-class restaurant with all those huge windows and all that light. It's a great place. The kids didn't like it at first, and now they think it's absolutely wonderful. They play bingo on Fridays, and they were informing us how crooked the bingo was being set up. Now, they were happy. Everybody up there was happy. Many of the classrooms have kids sitting in them, probably, say 8 to 12. The separation was wonderful. Everybody was wearing masks without complaints. And it looked like it was choreographed because they were doing just exactly what we would want them to be doing. And I saw my first band practice with masks. And here's the jazz band. Everybody is masked up. They're playing clarinets, they're playing tubas, they're playing saxophones, they're playing everything. Everybody has a mask. And, it's got a hole in it apparently because there was air coming out. And they've got masks over the bells of the instruments. It was absolutely amazing. And he said there have been absolutely zero transmissions due to classroom, any time that they've been together in classrooms or lunchroom. The only cases that they've had have been through sports. So, you know, everything they're doing is working incredibly well. On February 16th, the negotiations committee met. All members were present. We are meeting again on March 4th. And I want to share with the board that I had a very, very good telephone conversation with Grant. We had specifically, I agree with a lot of, with what he said. And the first thing you have to all mention, the very first thing that came out of Grant's mouth and mine, was the fact that this was not a negotiation session. We did not talk about any topics that will come up for negotiations. We talked basically about the atmosphere and the fact that both, well, I can't speak for FEA, but the board very much wants to collaborate with the teachers, and we're hoping that negotiations go as smoothly as a difficult process like negotiations can. But that is what I've been doing.
Thank you, David. I will just mention that, yes, I was at the crossover breakfast this morning, the NDSBA Lunch and Learn regarding superintendent evaluation. I attended. Looking forward, just a couple things I wanted to point out on our calendar. We have some homework due March 10th. Our work session was confirmed for March 8th, starting at 8 a.m., so please plan to spend a few hours of that day here in this room. We're working to set up the final agenda for that, or topics for that meeting. Regarding the town halls, I had some additional comments, or actually comments I was going to make more so. Nikki, you covered a lot of what I intended to share. So thank you for that. As chair of the Communications, Engagement, and Advocacy Committee, that is definitely your spot to do that. And I wanted to remind the board that we discussed back, I'm just looking at minutes, back at the December 15th CEA meeting, in talking about our work plan and talking about engagement with different stakeholders within the district, staff being one of them. What might be some ways that, you know, we could think about expanding our communications and engagement with staff. And following that, really, this town hall concept was developed, I would say, in a unique way, in that I see it as a collaboration between the board and administration. Dr. Gandhi presented the idea. It was discussed at the CEA committee meeting. It's been a couple of times now. And looking at how could we incorporate that into our work plan in a strategic way and in a methodical way and in a way to start to begin some additional processes. So I'm looking forward to this process beginning as a start. It's a new way of engaging and sharing information and ideas, and we can make changes along the way if we decide that this isn't a way to go. But I would suggest that we give it some time and that we see this as an additional tool for us to all be working together and to not be looking at it in a way of minimizing communication. And additionally, we did receive an email January 26th by I know it went at least to board members, probably copied to administration, from the Fargo Education Association asking us to really suggest to Dr. Gandhi that the meetings that were being held on a regular basis between FEA representatives and administration or cabinet be reinstated. And I have not added that to an agenda for us to consider because I see that as something that's in our governance process outside of our purview, of a little bit of getting into the weeds and directing administration in terms of how they do their work and how they handle that communication. So I wanted to let you know why it hasn't been on an agenda since I have received, or since we've received that communication. I guess if anyone feels differently, if any board members feel differently, contact me. You know how items can be added to an agenda if you feel like we need to be changing course, but I wanted to explain that to you. The last item I wanted to share, since I wasn't at the board meeting in person a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to just give you a little bit of an update on the Native American Commission meeting that was held last month. And at that meeting, David Berkman and Melody Stabner provided a presentation via Zoom. Those meetings are still being held via Zoom regarding the renaming process of Woodrow Wilson. And they touched on a variety of items, but realizing that the name Dakota was chosen probably for a variety of reasons. We may have not all voted for the same, the name for the same way, and maybe we didn't all vote for the name, but that was the one, as we know, rose to the top. So that's where the district is working on planning for that new name. And the reason that the two individuals spoke at the Native American Commission meeting about that is to help inform Native Americans of our process, realizing that no matter how we arrived at the name Dakota, we sit on Native land. And it's the respect of allowing individuals that are tribal individuals to understand better our process and invite them into the space for communication and dialogue. So I wanted to thank David Berkman and Melody Stabner for providing that information. They also said that they would be willing to come back to that committee with an update as we get farther down the road. And I believe that takes us to the end of the agenda. Our next meeting is March 9th, and it's 6:25, and we're adjourned. Thank you.